diseases. Kuti taure nezvazvo, kuda kuzvibata zvese, tinotoda gore rese. So what we are going to do is go through some common themes zvinoenderana nezvirwere zvemoyo, or the heart, and our blood vessels, the cardiovascular disease. That's what we are going to do. And ndinosiwanzokupawo scripture yatinofamba nayo tiri kuhealth and safety kwedu, 3 John 1 verse 2. Dear friend, I pray that you may enjoy good health and that all may go well with you, just as you are progressing spiritually. So that scripture is going to remind us that we should not just concentrate on our spirituality, but we should also consider our own health. Zvese zvifambe zvakanaka. Ndiko kuti tibudirire muupenyu hwedu semaKristu. So in terms of cardiovascular diseases, zvinobata zvakawanda. I can say the cardiobit is easy, which is the heart. That's easy to understand kuti zvine chekuita nemoyo. But in terms of the vascular aspect of it, zvinoti one day the vascular aspect of it, you can literally think of any organ iri mumwiri medu, and it will have some blood vessels, and those vessels can have some problems, and which will lead to poor function of that organ. So in that sense, it covers pretty much our whole body. But I will try and focus more on two organs, which is the heart and the brain. Nekuti ndo dzatinyanya kusangana nadzo mukufamba kwatinoita. Some of the things are a bit more common as well, zvakaita aneurysm, but I will not spend a lot of time on those ones. But mostly the heart and the brain ndo pandichada kuti nditaure zvakati one day. When we talk about the heart, there are different things that you can think about. Like the commonest ones, unakanzwa kuti aita heart problem, there are probably two main things that people think about. One, they think about heart attack, myocardial infarction, or people will think about heart failure as two main diseases that affect the heart. Heart attack being the end spectrum, the problems of the blood vessels of the heart. Heart, we know the heart being a pump of the blood and getting a lot of blood within its chambers. But the way it works, although there is a lot of blood coming to it, it is not that blood. It's not that blood which is in its big chambers that is nourishing the heart itself. The heart also has blood vessels, which are not inside, but as actually on the surface of the heart, and on the coronary arteries. And those coronary arteries will have some problems. I will come a bit further down after some common things as affect my blood vessels. So we need to think of the heart as having blood vessels which can have problems, leading initially just to pain or heart pain, which is called angina, or if there is sudden blockage of that blood vessel, will lead to the death of the muscle of the heart, which is commonly known as myocardial infarction or heart attack. But there are also other problems of the heart, not necessarily related directly to blood vessels. Things like the valves. You probably remember that the heart has got valves, and those valves either can become too narrow, which is called stenosis, or they become leaky. When they're supposed to close, they don't close properly. So blood flows back and forth instead of just going forward, something called regurgitation. So you can have problems of the heart, of the heart valves. Then you can have problems of the muscle of the heart. Some of it will be due to inflammation, myocarditis, and some of it is just due to poor function of the heart muscle, cardiomyopathy. Then you have a problem of the covering of the heart, something that is called pericarditis. It is due to inflammation, and we used to see a lot of that back home, TB. My valves, we used to see a lot of that as well back home, rheumatic heart disease. We don't see a lot of it here, the rheumatic heart disease, but as we age, we tend to get problems, especially with one of the valves, the aortic valve. It becomes narrow, it becomes too stiff, and it may need to be replaced, aortic stenosis. So it's something. So some of the things, we see them, but in different forms and due to different mechanisms of how they come about. Then, a lot of all these problems, if they are untreated or they are not treated, they are untreatable, they can lead to a common problem in one's heart failure, where the heart no longer performs its proper function. So heart failure can be a result of any of those things that I've mentioned. And when things don't work, then the heart fails to fulfill its function, which is to pump blood to every bit of your body that needs it. If there is a deficiency of that, then you have different levels of failure. Maybe mild, moderate, or severe. Severe is failure when things become where you can't really push much blood to the rest of your body. So, in a nutshell, that's kind of the things that affect the heart. And when we come to the brain, again, when you're looking at the cardiovascular aspect of it, we are looking at things like, we are mostly looking at stroke or cardiovascular accident. And stroke, there are essentially three forms of stroke. One is when the blood vessel blocks, denote ischemic stroke. There is lack of blood flow to certain parts of the brain, which, if not reversed, will lead to death of that part of the brain. Or you can have a rupture of a blood vessel within a certain region of the brain, and you end up with a blood clot within the brain itself. Not a blood clot within the blood vessel, but a blood clot within the brain itself. That one is called a hemorrhagic stroke. Then the other one is due to, these first two are usually due to an issue with the arteries. And then the other one, you actually have a problem with the veins themselves. And usually there is a blood clot within the veins. We saw a slight increase in those cases during the peak of COVID, when you had blood vessels within the veins of within the brain, and that can lead to bleeding, also to stroke. Then coming to the bigger arteries, I will not spend a lot of time talking about these ones, but you can have issues, again, with blockage of the blood vessels. There is a major blood vessel that comes from the heart to the rest of the body called the aorta. That one is a bit too big, but it can still get blocked. But as you get a little bit further away from the heart, like in the legs, you can have blockage of those arteries, and can lead to people losing their legs, ending up with amputation or bits of their limbs. It can be the toes, the fingers, different bits of due to blockage, or you can have weakness in the wall of the blood vessel, which will lead to abnormal dilatation or enlargement of that blood vessel called an aneurysm. It can happen again anywhere within the body. It can happen in the brain. It can happen within the major blood vessel, the aorta. It can happen even in the eyes. It can happen anywhere, the aneurysms. And you have different consequences depending on where they are. So in a nutshell, that's a kind of some of the issues that you would think about when you talk about cardiovascular diseases. You can even go further in things like problems with the kidneys. If you want to go to smaller vessels, you can include things like within the kidneys. You can have problems with your eyes, the retina. So it's very broad. I just touched on some of the things. But what I was coming to, and I hope I'll spend a little bit more time, is looking at the common themes about the cardiovascular diseases. And with that in mind, think about the common risk factors for all these things. They tend to have common risk factors, which if you manage to address them, you reduce the risk of any of some of those diseases happening. Things like the coronary artery disease, the stroke, the blockage of blood vessels within your limbs, or the aneurysms. If you address some of these common risk factors, you reduce the risk of those conditions happening. One of them, and the commonest one, and probably the worst of them all, is smoking. This has got the greatest contribution to those diseases. It's not the only one, but it's got the greatest contribution. You have excessive drinking. You have high cholesterol, high blood pressure or hypertension. You have diabetes, a sedentary life, that is lack of physical activity, obesity, and also there are some things you can't control, i.e. your family history. You can't really choose where you want to be born, or you can't choose your genes. Those are given to you or are passed down to you. And if there is a strong family history of some of these diseases, it means your risk is higher than somebody without that higher or high incidence within the family. So the important thing is a lot of these things are modifiable. So that's where it matters. If you were going to sleep, that's probably where you should wake up. A lot of these things are modifiable, and I'm sure all of you already know. It's just that it's a bit difficult sometimes to do what is necessary. And well, we are humans. There are some things that are difficult to change, and I do accept that. I do, as a person, I also face some of the challenges. So as much as I'm saying them, it doesn't mean that I'm succeeding in solving all of them. But really, the main thing is if we address these risk factors, we will be able at least to reduce the chance of those diseases happening. It doesn't necessarily mean we'll be able to stop it completely, but reduce the chance of it happening. So number one, the first thing that you need to do, if you are more than 40 or more, at least here in England, I don't know how it is in the Republic of Ireland, it might be slightly different. But here in England, if you are 40, when you turn 40, you get a letter from your GP, say, come for a health check. A lot of us will just ignore that letter, may not even open it, or just see it and put it straight into the shredder or into the bin and don't even think about it, don't even blink. But it is very, very important that we take that opportunity to have a health check. A health check is available for anyone who is not already undergoing surveillance for some of these major diseases. Like if you have high blood pressure, you may already be having surveillance for some of these things, and you may not receive an invitation for health check. What does it involve? It involves a questionnaire. You are having an interview. They are looking at your risk factors. They're asking about yourself, your activity, your diet, essentially just checking those risk factors, smoking history, things like that. They would do a panel of blood tests, which include your blood sugar, your kidney function. They may do your liver function. You may also have a control of what you ask them. If you know you've got a specific predisposition to certain diseases, you can ask them to do some of the tests as well at that time. Depending on who you are talking to, they may do them, or they may want to refer you to a different person to be able to do those tests. So it's really up to us to know and to make best use of the health check when we go there. They also do your blood pressure. So those are kind of, in a nutshell, what they will do at this health check. It sounds simple, and here in England, it's not necessarily done by the GP. It's probably not even done by the practice nurse. When I had my last one, it was done by a healthcare assistant. So it sounds simple, but it is very, very important that we have it done. It's not really about who is doing it. It's simple tests, but they are very, very important in identifying or in early identification of certain problems, so that if they are addressed, you can adjust your risk for having some of these cardiovascular problems. So that's number one. You need to have a health check if you are 40 or more, or whatever age they start over there in Republic of Ireland. Then the other things now you need to do it yourself. Either they have been raised at the health check, or you know that already that you need to do more activity. I say, when people talk about activity, they start quoting numbers that you need to do 3,000, 10,000 steps and whatever. Yes, that's important to have a goal, but all I'll say is something is better than nothing. Start somewhere and increase if you can. If you're doing nothing and you start doing 10, that's something. But of course, do something, aim to have something that is more meaningful than just a little bit. But definitely starting something is better, and have some realistic goals. That's probably one of the important things, to have realistic goals, because if you set goals that are not achievable, you are bound to fail. You get disappointed, and then you stop. So have small incremental goals, and you are more likely to achieve them. Our diet, this is always a difficult one, because there are different diets. If you look on TikTok, if you look on any social media, you will find different diets. But the best line really is you need to have a balanced diet. Diets that avoid a lot of things are probably not the best. You need to have a balanced diet. You need to make sure you're taking every essential nutrients that you need, rather than unnecessarily avoiding certain things. Yes, there are some bad things that you need to avoid, but that doesn't necessarily mean you avoid a certain group of nutrients altogether. And you may need to seek professional nutritional advice, which you can get maybe at your GP or through different approved nutritional websites. So physical activity, diet, all of those, trying to avoid or reduce obesity, reduce weight. That's the aim of that. Avoid obesity or reduce weight. That's one of the main aims. And when you increase activity, there are some other benefits that you get other than just weight. You also improve your blood pressure control if you have hypertension. If you don't have hypertension, you tend to reduce your blood pressure with activity. You also reduce your chance of having type 2 diabetes, which is a risk factor for cardiovascular disease. So just by increasing activity, you can help reduce some of these problems. If you're diabetic or if you're hypertensive, you need to have good control of those. It means regularly taking your medicines. If you're on medicines, if you're controlling them by diet, then it means sticking to appropriate diet. You need to have good control of diabetes, and you need to have good control of your blood pressure. If you smoke, there are no two ways about this. You have to stop smoking. Some will say, what about nicotine patches? Nicotine is actually part of the problems with cardiovascular disease. So it's not just some of the ingredients within smoke, but also include the nicotine itself. So yes, nicotine patches can be a good way to help you stop smoking, but the aim should be to even stop that as well, because the nicotine is part of the problem. Then alcohol, yes, I'm UMC. So Muvui, I will tell you whether or not you should stop, you should not drink. Mufana kuita tsime risina tumbuyu. But on the health point, the health point of view, if you're drinking, you need to drink in moderation. That would be the advice of that. So, stop if you can, otherwise do it in moderation. So those kind of the risk factors and what we need to do to reduce the chance of getting some of the cardiovascular diseases. Then why does it matter, and how do these conditions arise? What is really happening that actually lead to the disease when we are talking about blood vessels? The main thing really is narrowing of the blood vessels. If you think about the blood vessel, think about a hose pipe, and then for some reason it blocks, or even think about this kitchen sink, and we are chucking in all the food in there, some mafuta, all those things. You will end up with a blockage of the sink, and you may even need higher pressure to get the water moving again. So essentially, that's what we are doing to your own body. When we get these diseases, you get the blood vessels clogged up. The way the fat clogs up blood vessels, it's not quite like within this kitchen sink. Well, it's a little bit more complicated like that, more than just how it works in the kitchen sink. But in terms of the final result, which is just the narrowing, it's pretty much the same. But the fat essentially accumulates within the wall of the blood vessels. There is it also triggers an inflammatory response, some inflammation, which further worsens the situation. And then you end up with a thickened and narrow vessel, which means your heart needs to work a little bit harder to get the blood going through. And by making the heart working a bit harder, means you're causing more strain to the heart, you're increasing your blood pressure, and in the end, there's not enough blood reaching to where it's supposed to be going. If you look at the heart, it's trying to work very hard, but the blood that's coming to nourish it is becoming less and less. So that is what's happening when you have things like angina. And that will lead to pain. I'll come to some of the symptoms of some of these problems in a little while. But that's the main thing. Blood vessels narrow, and because it narrows, the narrowing process tends to be gradual, and on itself, that one can lead to problems like angina, where you just get the pain, but the pain will stop after you rest or you've taken some medication. Then what can then happen is you have sudden blockage of the blood vessel, where you have the narrowing because the blood is not flowing properly. That predisposes to formation of blood clots, and that can lead to complete blockage of that blood vessel. If it's in the heart, that will cause a myocardial infarction or a heart attack. If it's in the brain, that will cause a stroke. If in different parts of the body, you have different results that will come when the blood vessels to that region are blocked. You can also have weakness of the blood vessel, which will lead to abnormal dilatation and enlargement, as I said, and in some cases lead to rupture of the blood vessel. If it's in the head, you get a blood clot within the brain itself. It's in one of the major blood vessels, you get aneurysms, which can rupture and can be catastrophic. So those are some of the things that can happen as the underlying process that leads to the condition. As I come towards the close of this, I'll just mention a few things about myocardial infarction and stroke, really, and or heart attack. When you watch a movie, somebody who is having a heart attack, they usually have some characteristic way they portray somebody is having a heart attack. But quite often it's not like that. Yes, you may get chest pain, but quite often it's not typical pain where you say, a lot of people, when they have sharp pain, that's when they think with sharp pain is what you get with that attack. Most of the time, it's not like that. A lot of the time, it's more of a discomfort, some heaviness. That's what you feel. And quite often, it just feels like heartburn. I'm sure a lot of you have had heartburn at some point. So quite often, it just feels like heartburn. Then there are other things that tends to be associated with that. If you have the pain, there is a way that the pain, it seems to be spreading around your body. It can be going up your neck, it can be going up your arm, tends to be going towards the left arm. You can start to sweat excessively, and quite often you just feel like you just feel unwell, and you feel a bit anxious, and you just feel like there is going to be something bad, or you feel that like there is an impending doom. You can feel nausea, and then the pain tends to be prolonged, unlike angina, which tends to happen when you are exercising or you are doing some physical activity or going through some stressful period. But after resting, the pain starts to dissipate. When you're having a heart attack, the pain doesn't go away, it stays there. Even if you take some of the medication which people who have angina will take, or the GTN, the glycerol trinitrate spray, which they put under their tongue, if you take that, you find that the pain is still going. That's what tends to happen with heart attack. But the most important thing that I'll tell you is, if you have this constant discomfort in your chest, which you can't really explain, if you have these other symptoms, that's even more reason for you to worry. You need to act fast, because time is heart muscle. The sooner, if it's a heart attack, the sooner the blockage is reversed, the more heart muscle you are able to serve. So don't waste time trying to diagnose yourself whether this is heart attack or not. If you are not sure, or if you are concerned, just ring the emergency services. If it's chest pain, it's one of those things they will come quickly, and they will be able to do whatever they need to do to have some certainty whether it's a heart attack or not. So don't try and do it yourself. Call the emergency services. If it was here in UK, I would say call 999. I don't know what number you use in the Republic of Ireland. Stroke is similar in the sense that it's also you need to act fast. But the way stroke presents is different. It depends on which area of the brain is starved of blood. Quite often, it affects our motor function, which means our movement. It may affect just one hand, it may affect a hand and a leg, it may affect just the face or the side of the face, may affect just the speech, may affect just the vision. So it affects, depending on which part of the brain is affected, that will determine the presentation of the stroke. There may be pain associated, but sometimes there is no pain. If you get pain, some type of stroke will present as very sharp pain, which they call thunderclap headache. It's very intense, sudden onset headache. And I think that type of headache is why kumusha waisonzi munhu akaita stroke dzakarohwa nezvidhoma, because that was probably the only explanation they can get why somebody will have such severe sudden onset pain and then immediately lose function of part of their body. It all just seemed a little bit mysterious, and just like many other things, zvidhoma is one of those things that will be pointed at. Again and again, time is brain. You need to act fast. If it's a stroke that is caused due to blockage of a blood vessel, if you present early enough, they can try and unblock it and save a little bit more brain. If it's a little bit too late, they cannot unblock it, because trying to unblock it will cause more problems. So, and again, don't try and do it yourself at home. Try and decide, is this a stroke or kune inonzi transient ischemic attack, where you have the symptoms of a stroke, but they go away quickly. Don't try and do that yourself. If you see things are not right, call emergency services. They will do the necessary tests for you and then do whatever is necessary, or reassure you if you are lucky enough that it's not a proper stroke. Then to finalize, I'll just probably make a quick summary. So the thing about cardiovascular disease is, number one, you need to try and prevent them by reducing those risk factors. If we can't prevent the occurrence, try and have early detection by doing your health check. You can have your blood pressure measured at a pharmacy. Just walk into a pharmacy. Some of them will offer you a blood test, or you can just buy your own machine, assuming it's appropriately calibrated. You can measure your own blood pressure. So there are some things we can do to detect early. If you do happen to have some of these more severe presentations like stroke or heart attack, you need to act fast to try and salvage some of the heart muscle or some of the brain. Then if you happen to have a heart attack or a stroke, there will be a rehabilitation period to try to bring you to as near normal function as possible. Sometimes you can even go back to full function. So even if you have it, it doesn't necessarily mean that your life will be limited. Then again, important thing is look after yourself, give yourself enough rest, try and sleep as much as you can, and try to enjoy life. Thank you.
Amen, amen. Vadikani tinoda kungotenda Dr. Chinaka with all his busy schedule. Vatiwanirawo mukana isusu kuno kuRepublic of Ireland kuti vazoshare nesu on a topic that impacts on our life. Tinoziva kwabatwa zvakawanda wanda. Tanzwa zvazviri kutaurwa neunyanzvi wazvo chaizvo. Tikanzwa kuti ma-risk factors ndemapi uye kuti tingaita sei kuti tive reduce. Taudzwa kunzi these conditions can be modifiable. Uye zvimwe zvinotozogona kusvika pakuti zvive zvinoita zviri nani upenyu hwedu huve huchienderera mberi. Ndokunge tatevedzera zvazviri kuedza kutaurwa zvakaita se exercising, diet, reducing weight. I know it's a challenge, like he was saying, but kana tikangoedza kuita zvishoma nezvishoma, a little bit is better than nothing at all. Zvinozotiitirawo zvakanaka. Tinoda kungotenda Mwari, vane nzeve vanzwa. Ndinoda kutenda zvikuru munazotitenderawo kuna mai, asi ndichasiyira my co-pilot Baba Mugauri vave vanopawo mashoko madiki diki kuti ekutenda vachizopa kuna mai mukwenjesi mucheya wedu vachazenge vari kutivharira mazvita. Thank you, Doctor. You are very welcome to come again to Republic of Ireland.
Thank you. If there was anyone with a burning question.
Oh yeah, sure. Sure, the floor is open. Kuneva nemibvunzo. Kana paine vane mibvunzo yavanoda kubvunzawo chiremba makasununguka.
I will just tell you a story. I think it was around 2012. We were living in Northern Ireland. Takaita sangano and one when Republic, they came and supported us quite a lot. Unfortunately, church actually announced Sumukazwayo, but we felt very supported by Republic of Ireland, that was Northern Ireland. 2012, some will remember.
Yeah. Zviro kwazvo tinotenda. Mazvita kunyarara zvinoreva kuti zvaringana. Tinoda kungotenda.
Pamusoro imaipad.
Taurai zvenyu maibok.
Inini handina mubvunzo. Handina hangu mubvunzo, asi ndikuda kungotenda nedzidziso yepamusoro. Ndandiri kunzwa ndiri kuitirwa zvakanaka zvikuru nekudzidza nekuda kwechidzidzo chanhasi. Mazvita zvenyu nekutsaurawo nguva yenyu, mazvita maipari nekucheya nekutendai. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Mazvita maiboka tinoda kutendawo shuwa nemashoko iwayo. Kazhinji tinokanganwa kungotenda kungoti mazvita kunyangwe tisina mubvunzo, asi mazvita maiboka nekumirawo panguva iyoyo muchititendera. Over to you, Baba Mugauri, kana pasina vamwe vanoda kutaura.
Mazvita maipari rega nditi pamusoro pamuri mato chigara. Rega nditi pamusoro